at hand, we all have questions about how November 3rd will play out amongst all the voters across America. To quote Abraham Lincoln, "Elections belong to the people, and the ballot is stronger than the bullet." Today we have as our guest Secretary of State Trey Hargett. The Honorable Mr. Hargett has been Secretary of State since 2009. Prior to that, he was chair of the Tennessee Regulatory Authority. He also served as a House member of the 97th Tennessee General Assembly. He hails from Ripley, Tennessee. He and his wife Dawn have 2 children. He's got a BA and an MBA from the University of Memphis. So we want to thank Secretary of State Hargett for joining us today on Ben Lomond TV. So, Secretary Hargett, we welcome you, and if you'll tell us a little bit about your office and your duties as Secretary of State.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I do have a real concern that my presence will cause ratings to absolutely plummet on your show, so I'm going to have to ask you to carry your weight here. But I have a great opportunity here in my 3rd term as Tennessee Secretary of State, and I'll talk to you a little bit about some of our duties. I know we want to spend some time on elections this morning, but we have over 300 employees that run the gamut from working with libraries across the state, suburban and rural libraries, to make sure they have the training, the technological support, and materials they need to serve their communities. We have the Tennessee State Library and Archives in downtown Nashville, which so much of what we do now we're able to offer online, but we have the largest genealogical search collection anywhere in the state of Tennessee. And for those who have formed a business, file annual reports with us, filed a uniform commercial code liens, you get those through our Division of Business Services, where even during this pandemic, we have by and large been able to keep our offices open and so our customers, walk-up customers, can do business with us, as well as continue our online offerings. And we also have some oversight of nonprofit organizations in the state of Tennessee and investigating those organizations who are not abiding by the charitable solicitations law in our great state. And there's even a few things that people have no idea that we do. Athlete agents in the state of Tennessee have to register with our office, as well as we are the first stop for any company that wants to be a fantasy sports operator in the state of Tennessee. So that doesn't mean I can tell you who you should start next week during your fantasy football league. But we do have a role in regulating those organizations as well. And I serve on 15 different boards and commissions that touch practically every corner of state government in some way. So it's a really unique opportunity to make a positive impact in the lives of our fellow Tennesseans. And the last thing I'll mention to you is probably the most public piece of what we do right now, and that's called elections. And if you've slept a Holiday Inn Express last night, then you're an expert on elections, is what we're finding out this year especially. And we're doing everything we can to make sure that Tennesseans can cast their vote in a safe, clean, and secure fashion, and they can have confidence in the results. And now more than ever, we think that our role with the public trust is that much more critical to making sure that people can trust their elections, because if they can't trust their elections, then it's hard to trust their form of government. So, Jimmy, I'd be love to take whatever question y'all have for me today.
How are we going to ensure that there's no fraud in the Tennessee election process for the November 3rd date?
Well, there's a lot of different things, a lot of different safeguards. I mean, one is a photo ID law that we have in our state, which has, polled at well over 80% popularity, where, we are able to ensure that you are who you say you are. Now, there's a recent ruling by the courts that says that first-time voters, who we've never seen before, are going to be vote absentee. That does give me some concern. But, Tennessee is really a vote-in-person state. I mean, if you look at Tennessee, only 2% of voters typically vote absentee. Now, we know during this pandemic that's going to spike. But, we're working with every county out there to make sure that we verify signatures of voters as we come in and try and verify that people are who we believe they are. What's critical is that elections don't just pop up every 2 years and then election officials go back to sleep. That's not really how it works. Election officials in every county are working to make sure that our voter rolls are correct, that we remove people who are deceased off the voter rolls, making sure that as people move away, that they're removed from our voter rolls as they move on to voter rolls in other counties and states. So that takes away the opportunity of people to be able to vote twice. But also a critical piece of that is, the legislature passed a law a few years back that if you have any reason to suspect voter fraud, and you can give us anything that leads to conviction, there's up to $1,000 reward if you're able to show us about where voter fraud has been committed. So we think there are a lot of deterrents in place here in Tennessee to committing voter fraud. You know, some of the things you read about in other states, we don't have that problem here. You know, I'm not going to say voter fraud doesn't happen, but I do believe it's not rampant here in the state of Tennessee thanks to the many safeguards that we have.
So there's been a lot of questions about mail-in ballots and absentee ballots and how those are going to play out during this election process and how quickly they're going to be counted. So can you address that a little bit today?
Well, sure, and I want to make sure we get the vocabulary right. So an absentee ballot is actually a form of by-mail ballot. So there's absentee by mail, which requires an action on behalf of the voter, where in Tennessee a voter has to make that request, and they can do it by email, do it by fax, do it by snail mail, and they make that request. We verify their signature on that absentee ballot request, and then the election commission, the county election commission, mails a ballot back out to that voter, which that voter in turn mails back to the election commission. Now, what happens in a few states are what's called universal by-mail balloting. So in Tennessee, the voter takes action and says they want to vote absentee. In other states, and it's a handful of them, they mail out a ballot to every registered voter in the state, and regardless if they know if that person's still living there or not, and that's what makes it so critical. If those states are not maintaining their voter rolls accurately, then you have what happens in New Jersey. You know, in New Jersey recently they had a election in Paterson, New Jersey, and there's pictures and video of hundreds of by-mail ballots are in the floor of an apartment complex where anybody could pick one of those ballots up. And you don't, you know, so people who have moved on from those apartment complexes, they've moved on, don't live there anymore, but their ballot's sitting there. And so that's a real concern that I have about just election commissions mailing out a ballot to anybody. So with that said, though, I mentioned earlier that 2% of people typically vote absentee. You know, I think as we look at this election, it could be 10%, it could be 25% of people decide to vote absentee by mail. Well, with that comes a lot more paper coming to election commissions, and the infrastructure we have set up is built around in-person voting. And election commissions around the state have done a great job of making sure that we still have all the in-person availability of people to go vote. But with all those new ballots coming in, we need more people to help count those ballots. It takes longer to count those ballots. I mean, it's the difference in trying to read People magazine and all of a sudden trying to read War and Peace. You know, it's a lot more work. And so there's only so many hours a day, and those ballots can't be opened until the polls open on election day. So when those polls open on election day, at every county election commissioner around the state, they'll begin opening those envelopes. You know, they're verifying signatures. Then Democrats and Republicans together are working to flatten those ballots out and then run them through the scanners. And we have been able, through the CARES Grant Act, been able to take some grant money and buy the additional scanners needed for counties to process higher number of votes. But when you get into counties like Shelby and Davidson and maybe even Knox and Hamilton, there's going to be such a higher volume of ballots, they may not be able to get all those ballots counted on election day and election night. You know, I read a report earlier that Shelby County, their county commission just said that they're not going to let them buy any more scanners. And the administrator down there says, well, be prepared that it could take 3 or 4 days to count all the ballots in Shelby County. I would rather than, though, get it accurate and get it done fast. I'd rather have both, but we want to make sure that every vote is counted once and counted accurately. And I think across this country what you're going to see is on election night, we're not going to know the results of who the next president's going to be. I mean, we might have forecasts, we might have predictions, but I think there are going to be some states out there that it's going to drag out for days and maybe well into the next week, counting these ballots that are going to come in.
Would you explain a little bit about provisional ballots? Because I've had a couple of questions about that as well.
Well, sure. So a provisional ballot, there's a couple of different kinds of provisional ballots. One is if somebody doesn't have a photo ID or left their photo ID at home and they didn't have the necessary ID when they came to the polls, which, by the way, it has to be a valid state or federal issued ID. And when I say valid, that doesn't necessarily mean current. So if you've got an old driver's license, old military ID, old passport, what have you, that will work. It's just got to have your photo on it. And by the way, that's not verification of your address. It's just the verification that you are who you say you are. And if you show up, don't have that with you, you're able to cast a provisional ballot, and you have 2 days following the election to go back to your local election commission and show your ID, and then your ballot's counted. The other type of provisional ballot is if you show up and for some reason you are not on the election rolls there and you believe you should be, you're able to cast a provisional ballot, and if it is determined that you were supposed to be on the voter rolls, that ballot is then counted. And we have to go back and work with Department of Health, Department of Homeland Security and Safety, other state agencies to figure out, did you register somewhere else that we should have you on the rolls and don't. The last thing I'll mention is during this time of people requesting absentee ballots at such a higher level than they have in the past, is we're going to have cases, and we saw this in August, where people did not get their absentee ballot, or they got it and they didn't mail it back in time to be received by the election commission by the close of polls on election day. If you go, in that instance, if you go to the polls and you say that you haven't cast your absentee ballot, they will give you a provisional ballot to cast. And then if they get back to the election commission and determine that your ballot did not arrive back there, then your provisional ballot is then counted. The reason for that is you can't vote on the machine, because if you vote on that machine and then you get back to the election commission and your ballot is also being counted at the same time, then you would have double voted. So that's why it's important that you cast that provisional ballot to eliminate the possibility of double voting.
And thank you for explaining that. Another question that I had someone ask me to ask you is, why in person? What kind of guarantees and safety measures are we taking to make sure that everyone's going to be safe when they're standing in line or casting that ballot, either in a provisional way or via machine? So what are we doing basically to guarantee the safety of those people who come in person?
Great question. And so a couple of things I would mention to you. The United States Postal Service, as hard as they're working to make sure that they deliver every piece of mail in a timely and accurate fashion, that's not 100% success. And so whenever you request an absentee ballot, then we mail that ballot back to you, and then you have to mail that ballot back. There are several links in there that you can't control. You can't control how quickly the United States Postal Service is going to get that ballot back, and if they do in time to have it counted. But when you go to the polls and you fill out your ballot there, or you push that button on the screen, you know your vote has been cast and counted. So and also when you go to the polls in person, nobody else sees your vote. Nobody else has seen your envelope, and while the election commissions do everything they can to protect the integrity and privacy of your ballot, what you do know is that nobody's opened up your envelope along the way. Nobody has tried to take a sneak peek at your vote or whatever, even though I don't believe that occurs. In some states it may. The safest, most secure way to do that is by going to the polls and pushing that button, filling out the ballot there. So with that said, and also keeping in mind that, once again, 98% of Tennesseans typically vote in person, either during our robust early voting period on election day. And by the way, typically more than 60% of the in-person voting occurs during early voting, typically during those 2 weeks of early voting. So with that said, we began back in March working with county election officials and health department officials to make sure we did the things necessary to create a safe and clean and secure environment. And there are multiple things we've done, and I have been very pleased by the detail-oriented plan that's been put together by state and local officials. And I'm going to hit on a few different things. Number one, if you went and voted in person during the August election, you probably felt like you had walked into a surgery center or a clinic or a hospital. In fact, I visited over 40 counties to witness it myself and talked to voters as they left. And every single person said they felt safe, they felt like it was clean, they felt like it was secure. It starts off by practicing social distancing, as people go to the polls. We're encouraging social distancing, and we're also encouraging people to wear a face covering when they go into the polls. Now, we can't make them, but anecdotally, I will tell you well over 9 out of 10 people are wearing a face covering when they come to the polls. And also our election officials who are working the polls, they're wearing face coverings and or face shields. They are thinking about the different touch points in the process so that multiple people don't touch the same pen, don't touch the same surfaces, and if they are touching surfaces, they're cleaning those down on a very frequent basis. Even to the point when you put your ID in front of the election worker, typically they're holding it with gloves, or they may hold it with gloves. They may just look at it and then tell you to pick it back up. So they're doing so many different things to keep those facilities clean, to do everything they can to protect your health and safety, as well as the health and safety of the poll officials across the state.
And I think we, locally have done an exceptional job. Susie Davenport and her staff in the Election Commission continues to rise above all the challenges and make our elections safe. But a lot of that comes from the leadership that you have exuded over these last 10, 11 years throughout every election. So I'm proud of what Tennessee has done over the course of not only just the general elections, but the national elections, state elections as well. And so we thank you for that leadership and the professionalism that has been shown by you and your department. We appreciate it, and we as Tennesseans should be proud of what we've done and the lack of fraud and the oversight that we have in place to guarantee a fair election and that every vote is counted. So we appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate those kind of words. If I could just encourage people, if you're going to vote absentee, make your request now so you can go ahead and get that ballot back. And when you get that ballot back, get it sent back in. Don't wait. Don't leave it sitting on your coffee table or your kitchen table or your desk. Get it back in. But also, if you're going to vote in person, I ask you to go vote early, because that allows us also to spread the voters out across as many days as we can and the hours as we can. That allows us to practice greater social distancing to keep the polling place as clean as possible. Make your plan to go vote. And it also, I would say one more thing too. If you're going to vote on election day, typically the busiest times to vote are the first thing in the morning, at lunchtime, and at the close of polls, after 5 o'clock in the evening. If you have some flexibility and you can vote, in mid-afternoon, say 2 or 3 in the afternoon, you will find that those are the least crowded times. And so if you have the opportunity to go vote during those times, do that.
And thank you for those good suggestions. Moving forward, what do you see as the biggest challenge that we face as a state going into this November 3rd election?
Well, I think the biggest challenge we face, and by the way, I appreciate that lead in, is that there are so many people out there, both foreign and domestic bad actors, who want to erode confidence in our form of government. And we've got to be careful that we got to make sure we get our information from good sources. Honestly, I'm not saying this because it's you and I have this conversation, but you are a reputable leader in the community. Ben Lomond's reputable in the community and puts out good information. But there's a lot of people out there who, especially on Twitter and Facebook and other social media aspects, there's a lot of fake news out there, a lot of trolls out there on both sides who are doing what they can to try to erode confidence in our elections, our form of government. Don't get your information about election day and election hours and polling places from someone who has a kitten for a profile pic and 79 followers. Get it from somebody reputable. Go to the source. Go to your local election commission. Come to us at govotetn.com and get information from us. So get it from trusted sources. And there are people out there too who, in many cases, I think they mean well. But even yesterday, there's an article in the Tennessean telling people about how and when to be able to go vote, and they had the early voting dates wrong. So, even in some of those cases, you can't necessarily just count on what you're hearing from what should be reputable sources. Go directly to the source, and we've got a great app called Go Vote 10. It's free in the Google Play, or it's free in the App Store. You can download that, enter your information, and it will tell you where your polling sites are, what the hours of operation are, and you can even see your own sample ballot so you can be an informed voter when you go to the polls that day. But Jimmy, if I can just close with one thing, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, if you watch what's happening nationally, are laying out their case to not accept the results of this election. And so if you listen to Republicans, you will hear them beating the drum about by-mail voting and the problem with fraud and by-mail voting. And if you listen to Democrats, they're laying out the case that Republicans don't want you to have the opportunity to vote, and it's voter suppression. And the truth of the matter is, both sides are harming the confidence of the elections, because by and large across our country, election officials, and I don't know all of them personally, but I know a lot of secretaries around the country who are doing their best, Democrat or Republican, to make sure that every vote is counted once, no more and no less. Now, do I get worried when I hear stories like in California where they had 100,000 rejected by-mail ballots? That bothers me. When I hear stories about in Pennsylvania where they find ballots that are, have been thrown away, that bothers me. But here in Tennessee, we're doing everything we can to try and instill confidence in the results of our elections.
And thank you very much for clarifying that, because I think it goes a long way in assuring the voters that in Tennessee your vote will count. There is oversight, and we do it in a professional way that's very seldom ever questioned. So, and we thank you once again for that, and of course, all of our election commissions across the state of Tennessee. Do you have any parting words or final words to our citizens out there and residents who are listening today?
Well, I do have one final word, and I guess I'm going to take two if you don't mind. First, these elections don't happen without good leadership on the local level. You mentioned Mr. Davenport earlier. We're fortunate. We've got great administrators across this state who are doing a wonderful job, especially during this pandemic. So I'm very proud of them. And it takes 17,000 plus poll workers across the state to make early voting election day happen. And so if people have an itch to see civics and elections up close, contact your local election commission and be a voter. Be a poll official. Don't just be a voter, be a poll official. And the second thing, Jimmy, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you for the leadership you have shown and continue to show, both at the local and the state level, and what a great asset you are for the community there. And your citizens are fortunate for your leadership, and I know that I'm fortunate for your friendship as well.
And thank you very much, and the same goes from me to you. You've always been a close friend and an ally, and been very supportive of all of our measures that we have taken in Warren County to improve the quality of life for all of our citizens. So we want to thank you, and I want to especially thank you for being in town on Friday and sharing some money with our local library. Brad Walker there at the Magnus Community House and Library was very pleased to receive those funds, and we will continue to move forward across this county facing this pandemic and with the elections ahead and a new year coming soon. So we want to thank you and invite you and your wife to visit Warren County when things kind of get back to normal again, so we can show you a good time and what we have to offer.
Look forward to it, Jimmy. Thank you.
And thank you. So today we also have with our guests, and our first guest will be Susie Davenport, who is the Administrator of Elections for the Warren County Commission. So we'll be welcoming Susie. And then we will be welcoming Nolan Means, City Administrator for the City of McMinnville, and Grant Swallows, Director of Schools. Susie.
Good morning. As Secretary HARGETT has mentioned, elections are pretty high on our list right now. Obviously, in my office, they're extremely high on the list. The upcoming security, the safety of our voters, all of that is first and foremost. Just a little bit of statistical information for you about Warren County. We always are saying, oh, we've got around 20,000 voters, something like that. As of this morning, I did a little quick check. We have 21,775 active voters in Warren County. Another interesting tidbit is that since the cutoff when we quit taking registrations before the August election on the 7th of July, we have registered 942 new registered voters in Warren County since then. Obviously, other people, some of those folks that we did have on our rolls have moved to other counties and we've taken them off, but that's a pretty significant increase. We have 20 precincts in Warren County, scattered throughout the county, and our early voting site, all places that you can vote. If you vote during early voting, it doesn't matter where you live in the county. You come to the county administrative building, vote at the back of the building. Early voting is going to start on the 14th of October. It is going to end on the 29th. Secretary Hargett referred to the absentee balloting requests. Absentee ballots will be accepted, requests for those will be accepted through the 27th of October. But please, if you know you're going to request an absentee ballot, don't wait that late. Go ahead, get that request in. Our office has already received over 400 absentee ballot requests for this coming election. That is an increase from anything we've had in the past. Obviously, they're coming in every day. We expect to have quite a good number of absentee ballots in Warren County. My office staff is wonderful. They're processing those ballots every day. But if you wait until the 27th of October to request an absentee ballot, it's going to have to go in the mail from us. You're going to have time to mark it, and it's going to have to come back to us by postal mail. Now, you can send it by UPS or FedEx or any of those other postal mail services, but it does have to be returned by mail. We have people who walk in with somebody's ballot to return it, and I send them back outside to the postal box outside. Around here, our post office has been wonderful to work with. They have done everything in their power to expedite our ballot returns and sending them out. They're counting ballots that go out and they're counting ballots that come back in. They have a very robust national program going on trying to assist elections in getting those things out. However, if you wait until the last minute, even the best efforts could possibly keep your ballot from not getting there until after Election Day, and it has to be returned by Election Day in order to be counted. Those ballots will be counted by an absentee counting board that does not convene until Election Day. Sometime during early voting process, there's always someone asking, well, how's so-and-so doing? Are they winning? Who's winning? We don't know. We have no clue until Election Day the number of votes for any candidate. That's not something that the early voting process allows. Those are still sealed inside that machine and don't come out until Election Day. As for your sample ballots, those are up on our website already at warrentnelections.com. The ballot is on the front page of our website. It will be in the local paper on Sunday. It is already, we have paper copies circulating all over the place, and as Secretary Hargett mentioned, you can go to that govotetn.com website or use that app on your phone, and you can put in your information, your location, and you will see the ballot specifically that you will be able to vote on. Something we do have in Warren County that I'd like to mention, because their deadline is coming up. Registration deadline is the 5th of October. That is next Monday. I'd like to mention that people in all 4 cities in Warren County have the opportunity, if they own property in that city, to vote as a property rights voter. But you can't do it just because you own it. You do have to register just like you have to do if you are registering to vote. You have to register to vote on that property. That would allow you to vote only in the city election in that city. And all 4 of our cities, Centertown, McMinnville, Morrison, and Viola, by charter, allow for property rights voting, but you do have to bring a copy of that deed into our office showing you as a listed owner on that property. But I want to go ahead and get that word out because that deadline is coming up fast. Registrations for people who will be 18 years old, possibly even on election day. If you turn 18 on November 3rd, if you register before October 5th, you're going to be eligible to vote in that election. Your first election might happen on your birthday. I have a commissioner who has voted many, many times, and he is thinking he may have a Guinness record. He's voted in every election since he was first eligible on his birthday one year. And I think that was possibly for Mr. Eisenhower. Been a while, but he's very proud of that fact, and I'm very proud of the commission I work for. Those people have the fairest and the most available elections in mind. That's what they aim for the people of Warren County. They want to make sure that everybody who is eligible to vote gets to vote, and anybody who isn't doesn't. So we have a very good election commission that looks out for the interests of the people of Warren County. Another thing I'm currently needing is some kids who need some Tennessee Promise or National Honor Society hours, some community service hours. We're making up packets for voters. If you went to vote in August, when you walked in, you got a packet. It had an ink pen and a sticker and a pair of gloves. We found out those gloves were hard to get on. You can't lick your fingers whenever you're wearing a mask. It just doesn't work, and you can't get them apart. So this time those gloves will be an option. People can get them at the door if they want them, but they're still going to get that packet with an individual pen. And what we found was most people are taking that packet and just using that ink pen, that plastic bag, and putting over their fingers to touch the machines. So that's going to be available to everybody who walks in the door at a precinct or during early voting. So I need young folks who want to put those together. Be happy to sign off on their hours for them. The COVID-19 measures we are taking, obviously those packets are one of them. When you walk into the precinct, there's going to be a greeter there who's going to ask you some questions. They're going to ask you, have you been diagnosed with COVID in the last 14 days? They're going to ask you, have you had a temperature? And they're going to give you your packet and to ask you to social distance. If someone has not already voted during early voting, and they get diagnosed with, they were planning to go on election day and vote, and they get diagnosed with COVID. It's up to them, obviously, about quarantine measures. I can't have anything to say about that, but I can provide them still the opportunity to vote. We will, just like we did in August, have a voting machine set up outside the administrative building under the portico on election day. If someone can't go into their precinct because they've been diagnosed with COVID recently, if they think they may be sick, they can go to their precinct whenever they find out that they've got those issues. They're going to direct them up to our office building. So I have deputies there who are going to be in full PPE. They're going to have the gowns and the masks and the gloves. They're going to sanitize that machine. They're going to allow the voter to vote just like they would have done if they'd gone to the precinct. And then that machine's going to be sanitized again after they leave. So we are doing everything in our power in Warren County to make sure that every voter has the opportunity to vote, regardless of the pandemic or any other issues that may be prohibiting them from it. If you need to get registered to vote, do it before October 5th. Otherwise, you won't be able to vote in an election. Any questions? Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Susie, for all the important work that you and your staff do. I'm Nolan Ming, City Administrator, City of McMinnville. Just a quick update on city operations. Warren County has trended below 10 new COVID-19 cases per 100,000 people over a period of the previous 14 days for the past few weeks. Per state and CDC guidance, the threshold for acceptable disease transmission within the community is an average of less than or equal to 10 new cases per 100,000 people. over the last 14 days. As of today, September 29th, we are at 8.1 cases per 100,000 over the past 14 days. It was based on this guidance as of last week that we decided to reopen all city lobbies, the wellness center at the mall, and the Park Theater. All lobbies are now open, including Bell Street, Community Development, which is now back at City Hall on the second floor, Police, Fire, and Public Works lobbies also open. At Parks and Rec, the Wellness Center hours at the mall, Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to noon. Group exercise classes are being held on the pool deck, and you can check the city website for the schedule. Youth soccer registration is being held online at mcminnvilleyouthsoccer.com. In-person registration will be held only on Saturday the 3rd from 9 a.m. to noon at Pistol Park. We're currently in the process of planning our youth basketball league. We have just completed our sidewalk and ADA compliant parking at the dog park down by Pepper Branch Park. The Park Theater is now open and available for events with restrictions in accordance with the Tennessee Pledge guidelines. At City Hall, the elevator project has finally been completed. And as I stated previously, the Community Development Department has now moved back to the second floor of City Hall. Work is underway on the third floor and basement to prepare for the police department to relocate from Red Road to City Hall. The scheduled move is October 5th. First floor painting, flooring, new walk-up window has been completed at City Hall, and currently HVAC work is in progress. When complete, the administrative, utility billing, taxes, and business license staff will all relocate to the first floor of City Hall from Bell Street. The move is currently scheduled for October 19th. That's all I have for today. Thank you, and as always, please contact us at 931-473-1200 with any questions. Thank you.
Good morning. Glad to be here again to share a little bit about Warren County Schools. I will start this morning, as I've done the last few weeks, and update you on our case counts in the school system. I'm thrilled to be able to say that there are only 4 students that are isolated this week and 2 staff members that are isolated this week. That is down considerably. Of course, when you consider that there are almost 6,100 students, to only have 4 that have been identified as positive and to be isolated, we're very pleased with that. We know that that's a statistic that comes from the fact that we've done a really good job in our school system making sure that we're keeping our students and our staff safe throughout this time. With that being said, the Warren County Schools School Board met last week on Tuesday and discussed all of the things that have gone into making the decision around our school calendar, and made the decision to return to a traditional setting 4 days a week. So beginning Monday, October the 12th, that will come after fall break, schools will return to a 4-day traditional school week with Fridays reserved for remote learning. So we are excited about that. I've said that from the beginning. We want our students to be in school. We've wanted that from the beginning, but we felt like this hybrid approach has allowed us to begin the school year where in our county and really in our state and in our country, cases were rising. We've been able to actually keep steady, and then as you see by our data, and I think just as Nolan mentioned and Jimmy's talked about, in our county, our numbers have stabilized, and we hope to see them to continue to go down. Now, with that being said, we're excited about this 4-day week. I've had a few questions as to why we are continuing to learn remotely on Friday, and a couple of those reasons exist simply because we want to make sure that we continue to operate in the remote environment in case there were to be some reason to return to that environment. It's important that our students and our teachers continue this practice and be ready for it. Also, you need to understand that we have a number of students that are learning in the virtual instruction program, more than 1,000. And so teachers are having to teach students that are in front of them, as well as teaching students in the virtual environment. So on Fridays, it's really giving our teachers the opportunity to communicate, correspond, and catch up with what they need to on those Fridays. And as well as important to me, I think as any, is that it gives us a 3-day weekend to make sure that we're cleaning our facilities, making sure they air out properly, and do all the things that it takes to continue to keep our buildings clean and safe, as well as our students and staff safe. So with that being said, the way that I will finish this is thank you so much for doing what's been asked to be done, wearing masks, distancing appropriately. Let's don't lose that momentum. Please let's don't lose that momentum. I think we've come to a place to where we feel like we've done some good, and we have, but we have done that good through following the protocols and the procedures that we've put into place. So I'm asking you to please make sure that we are diligent in that. That begins in our community really with a celebration of homecoming on Friday night. We have a number of people that are excited about the Pioneers being 6-0, rightfully so. We're all excited about that. And homecoming is always a great time to celebrate and come back and be proud of your community and be proud of your school. I'm just going to ask, because we are regulated by the TWSAA, who was regulated by the governor's office, that said all sporting events that take place, masks must be worn, distancing must take place, and so we've put those procedures into place for a reason. I'm asking you, if you come out to Nunley Stadium on Friday night, to follow those protocols, to make sure that we're keeping everyone safe, and it will be hopefully a great night for all involved at Nunley Stadium on Friday. As always, I encourage you to reach out to me if you have questions. Reach out to your schools. They're doing fantastic work. This is the last week before fall break. That means we've been in school for 9 weeks. Our teachers, our staff, and our students have done fantastic work over these 9 weeks, and I look forward to continuing a great 2020-21 school year. Thank you.
I want to thank each one of them that joined us today for being team players, as Warren County appreciates the leadership that you have given during these trying times. A big shout out once again to our teachers in particular for being there, for being team players as well, and following the guidelines that have been put in place, but also for the parents and students who have gone the extra mile in order to keep our schools open. So as we move forward, we want to thank each and every person across Warren County that's played a small part or even a bigger part in mitigating this virus and making it safe for each and every individual. And so it's taken a team effort, a team approach, and we'll continue that throughout the end of this year and into next year, whatever is brought to us, because the challenges really come every day. Next week, we're going to be welcoming U.S. Senator Lamar Alexander to our show. He's going to be giving us some information about the extending of the CARES Act relief packages from Washington, and also to share his ideas on the Supreme Court nomination that is ahead. Some updates from the county. Our Census Committee continues to work diligently across the county to count as many residents as possible. It is important not only for redistricting on a national level, but also federal funding and state funding across this county. It looks like the deadline from the courts have been extended into October. We're not exactly how that's going to play out. But in the meantime, counting every individual and every resident is our priority. And so to do so, once again, we've done these signs before, and I'm going to show it again. If you've got any doubts whatsoever that you have completed this census, if you will go to my2020census.gov, you can do an online application. You can make sure that you are counted. It gives you options on phoning in. So those mail-in ballots were sent out earlier this year. Many people didn't receive them, but we're still doing some walk-up events during the rest of this week, and we'll be doing a planning session tomorrow on my census committee in order to move forward with some additional events for people to be counted. So if you have any doubts, you can still call my office at 473-2505, and we will try to connect you with an application process or getting signed up for the census. As we move forward, my emergency orders will continue in place through the end of this week in conjunction with the governor's executive orders. We're still waiting to see what the governor is going to do, as his orders will actually end at the end of this month, and we're not sure whether he's going to extend them or not. So we are working around that. In the meantime, county operations will continue through this week, but we're making plans for a reopening next week as we gain input from all of our elected officials and directors on county operations. We will adjust those schedules accordingly, and we'll share that with the media as soon as those are available and as soon as the governor takes action, supposedly in a news conference today. So if you have any questions about county operations, if you will call that individual office, that elected official or including the Election Commission, which is 473-580-5834. They will answer any questions that you might have about, once again, the services that are offered by the county. So my emergency preparedness team will meet again this week, and we will look at measures moving forward as new developments and new numbers come into play. And so I'm very proud of what Warren County has done. The face mandate has allowed our schools to remain open, our businesses open, and everyone's safe. And so without your duties and responsibilities on a personal level, we could have never done this. Our number one priority, once again, is the safety and security of every resident in Warren County. If we save one life, then it's all been worth it. In the meantime, if you will practice the same health guidelines that we've had in place since the beginning, wear your face mask when appropriate situations, use good personal hygiene, do the social distancing if at all possible, particularly in close quarters or in inside facilities. Avoid large gatherings if you feel that you have a health crisis or it is going to be a jeopardy to someone in your family. And respect, please, the health concerns of those individuals out there struggling to survive this pandemic. The vaccine is being tested, and we're all hoping that will be available soon. Hospital treatments have become more effective now as we learn more about this virus. We have gained much over the last 6 months. It goes a long way, basically, in mitigating and controlling this disease. The numbers are better, but we have to continue to stay on top of every one of our measures and guidelines, even though there may be some mixed signals from the CDC. You know what to do. You know what is right. You know what is responsible. And even though many people are asymptomatic, they still may pose a risk to those individuals who may be susceptible because of health challenges. Until we know more about what's coming from Washington or from Nashville, we just still continue to ask you to do your part. Do the right thing. Use common sense in your daily routines. By working together, our kids will stay in school, our businesses will remain open, and essential workers will be safe. In a few more months, many factors may change, and our nation hopefully will be able to look back on this time and be proud of our accomplishments and remain, as Americans, the standard bearer of all things that are good in the world. In the meantime, we have an election ahead of us, and we all need to do our part to make it as flawless and efficient as we possibly can. Just as Secretary Hargett suggested, vote in person if you can. We have taken the health precautions and standards to make it as safe as possible. So if you'll use the proper procedures and follow the guidelines, everyone should be safe and your vote will be counted. I want to leave you with a quote, once again, from Abraham Lincoln, who said, "The future of this republic is in the hands of the American voter." So go vote, Warren County. It's your duty and responsibility as concerned citizens. No one has the right to take away your ability to cast a ballot in any election. And so we are moving forward, once again, as a nation, as a state, and as a community. And as always, we are America strong, Tennessee strong, and Warren strong. Thank you.